So here's Washington's keys. Protect Penix. It's plain and simple. If Penix is Penix, you will most likely win the game. That's key number one. Key number two, create a turnover for a double stack. What I mean by double stack is scoring back to back off a turnover and or stop it or turnover of downs from the other team. And then also you need to limit the penalties. There's a lot of digging into the penalties. I was kind of like mind blown by Washington's penalty problem. And then also stay composed even if you are punched first. So let's get into this. We're going to start with protect Penix. Protecting Penix. Everyone keeps talking about Michigan's pressures. They've had 16 sacks in the last 4 games. They had 4 against Iowa and 6 against Bama, which is a lot. And I mean, they kind of limited Alabama's running game in the first half. I think they had 43 yards. But you got to think Washington's only given up 11 sacks all season long. Penix isn't that great outside of the pocket, but I don't think he really has to go outside of the pocket because I think this offensive line will be fine, but you still have to protect him regardless because Michigan will be strong up front. They will be fierce. So you have to be very careful with that. But I also think that a lot of people are giving this Michigan line a lot of credit last week for 6 sacks, which obviously they get credit. They did it, of course. But what I mean is this has been a thing for Bama all year long. Obviously, being an SEC fan and Auburn fan, I watch them play every game they play. And they've been Milroe, outside of being sacked in the Michigan game, has been sacked 38 times this year. Georgia sacked him 4 times. Auburn and Chattanooga both even had a sack. LSU sacked him twice. Tennessee sacked him 4 times. Arkansas had 5. Texas A&M had 6. Mississippi State had 4. Ole Miss had 4. Texas had 5. And hell, even Middle Tennessee State had 2. So the line has allowed Milroe to be hit all year. Earlier in the year, it was kind of Milroe holding the ball a little bit until they figured out their identity and let it trust him a little bit more. But even after they did, it still became commonplace of him being sacked. So don't freak out, Washington fans, about that stat of Milroe getting sacked so much because Mississippi State even got to him a heck of a lot. Tennessee, who did have a good rush defense this year, and they were all right, they got to him a lot. Texas A&M got to him the same amount of times as Michigan did. So everybody's been able to get to him except for Kentucky. I think they were the only team that didn't sack him. Let's go to create the double stack. Creating the double stack, like I said, is scoring twice back to back off either a turnover or turnover of downs from your opponent. So it's basically this is the hard part. Michigan's hardly turned the ball over at all year. They're third in or tied for third in nationally in turning the ball over, as in keeping the ball. And I think they've only had 8 turnovers, and 3 of those turnovers were in like a 31-6 win against Bowling Green that didn't even really matter. So it will more likely be you having to either make JJ McCarthy very uncomfortable or maybe get a strip or something. But most likely what will be happening is you want to get that turnover on downs, or you want to win the field position in the double stack of getting that back to back by turning them over on downs, like I just said. But keeping them deep in their territory if not going to force the turnover. But really forcing a turnover in this game could be very deadly for Michigan, like very deadly. All right. Washington, limit the penalties. This this is wild. So you have 38 penalties in the last 5 games, Washington, and 107 penalties on the year with an average of 7.6 per game. So let's just give you 8 penalties per game. They're 124th in the country in penalties. You have to lessen that for this game. The good news is the Texas game, you only had 5 penalties, which was the least amount you've had since the Arizona State game on October 21st. So it's been a long time since you had that small of a penalty game. So that's good. After that time off, you had one of your lower penalty games this past game. So hopefully you can carry that and that mojo into this week against Michigan. But that's huge. Penalties in a national championship game, you got to limit those. You cannot stick to your average. You got to go below your average like you did last week or this past Monday against Texas. So adding to protecting Penix, I just want to throw this out there. This isn't like I'm not, it's going to sound like I'm just straight up dunking on Michigan, but I'm not. I'm just trying to provide a perspective for Washington fans to where they will be comfortable against this Michigan defense and why I think they should be comfortable. So Michigan has not played an offense or QB remotely close to Penix all year. I mean, maybe the best comparison would be a Talia Tagovailoa, which really isn't even in the same category as Michael Penix. But yeah, Michigan is the number 1 defense. Like I said, don't be scared of that. But if we're going to be honest, 95% of the Big Ten is lucky it even has an offense with a pulse when it goes out onto the field. So numbers are kind of overblown for Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State because, I mean, you look at the schedule, and I mean, I have Michigan's schedule here. I wanted to make sure I had it correct, but I mean, what kind of offensive firepower are you seeing here? East Carolina, UNLV, maybe UNLV. I'll give them that. They got a little interesting like triple option spread offense going there in Vegas. Bowling Green, Rutgers, Nebraska, Minnesota, Indiana, Michigan State, Purdue. I haven't named a team with a pulse yet. Penn State, I guess if you want to say that's a pulse, maybe their defense, but Drew Aller basically was like Cade McNamara this year. I mean, that Penn State was just a more athletic Iowa, and that's not saying much. Even though they only lost 2 games, it's not like they had the other teams they had to beat were the other ones I'm listing off. Maryland, Talia, I guess, right there. Ohio State, Kyle McCord's not that impressive offensively. We knew that was going to be a defensive bloodbath. Iowa, what do you expect from that? It's Iowa. They didn't even freaking score. I don't think they got scored like outscored 92-0 against like actual good or winning teams. I can't even remember what it was. It's like whatever. That's a different stat for another day. But that's just I want to point that out. Uh Drew Aller, like I said, nothing to like it. And then even against Ohio State, all they really had to do was key Marvin Harrison Jr. Still went off, but I mean, Kyle McCord wasn't anything special. He isn't one of those Ohio State crazy QBs we've seen over the past. So that's that. And then I also want to point this out. Michigan has only played 3 games this year where a team has thrown the ball 30 or more times. So 2 of those 3 teams, one of them was Iowa, by the way, because they basically had to play comeback, Ohio State and Maryland, and both went over 250 yards, if I'm correct, passing on them, which also happened to be the only 2 teams on their schedule with a passing attack at all. Anyways, were able to throw on them. They were able to throw on them. So that's good. And then I want to point this out here. So, like I said, Michigan has only played 3 games this year where a team has thrown the ball 30 or more times against them in a game. So for Washington, you've only had 1 game with less than 30 passes, and you had 28 against Oregon State, a game that was pouring down rain, by the way. And you still almost had as many passes as an average Michigan face there. But basically, you've thrown for more than 30 passes in every game except one. Michigan has only played 3 games where they've played against a team throw the ball more than 30 times. So as far as their defense goes, if their secondary, how great their defense is, they haven't been attacked like this all year. They are going to be thrown at consistently. I expect like 40 passes out of Washington, maybe even more, and just coming at Michigan because that's their strength. That's what they want to do. This secondary for Michigan hasn't been thrown at this much. They haven't been thrown at like this. They have not been thrown at like they will on Monday against Washington. The amount and let alone the skill you have at wide receiver. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the only one, but the thing is, you got a room of like 4. You got the best wide receiver room in the country. You literally do. So with that, adding to protecting Penix, talking about that defense, they haven't really faced anyone that can throw. So I want to talk about first half fireworks because that's what you've done all year. Romeo Dunes and Jalen Polk, they're one of the 4 wide receiver rooms that both have over 1,000 yards. Yeah. Oh, Dunes, 82% of his receptions have gone for a first down or touchdown before the Texas game. But these guys can make insanely contested catches. Polk and O'Dunes. I mean, just go watch some of their highlights if you don't believe me. Just because it may be a badly thrown ball or someone's all over them, they will still catch that ball, and it's not going to be a problem. I don't care who your defense is in college football. You're not stopping them at all. And on top of that, you got even more guys. So you got to think Michigan's like, okay, we need to stop one of them. We got to stop one of those receivers, make them force feed the other one or run the ball, which I want to say real quick. Washington has been able to run the ball when they've kind of had to this year. People don't really go look at the stats. Even against good teams, they've been able to get over 100 yards consistently, which isn't as much as you'd want, but for them, and as long as Dylan Johnson's still healthy. But like I'm saying, back to the receiver, we stop one, make him force feed the other. You still have Jalen McMillan and Jeremy Bernard. Jeremy Bernard had 3 catches for 48 yards, 16 on average against Texas. Jalen McMillan has over 500 yards this year, averaging 13.5 a catch. Just because you stop the primary receivers doesn't mean the secondary guys can't slice you up. This wide receiver room is elite, and they will get you. Go to composure. I said stay composed even if you are punched first. Michigan's not the team to pull away against any real competition. They're just not like it's a bad thing, but they just aren't the team to continue scoring and making it out of reach. So that's a good thing for y'all. So if it starts rocky, Michigan punches you in the mouth first, kind of stay composed. Maybe they're up 10-0. They got an interception. Penix came out slow or anything like that. Your offense is good enough to, I don't even know if you can hear that snap, whatever there, to get you back in the game. So that's one thing. Stay composed if you're a Washington. I don't want them freaking out over that with a turnover quickly or just a stop of downs and going down 2 possessions against Michigan. Your offense is fine to not have to worry about that.